folks, it is that time again to talk about my TBR. Like last year, I am going to be moving into 2025 with a seasonal TBR rather than a monthly one, just because it's slightly working out for me a little bit better, although this year has been a lot. So it hasn't really worked out, but we're gonna try this experiment again. As you can see, I've got my stacks of books here, so let's get into those. Firstly, I think we'll talk about this middle stack. These are books that I'm trying to read with a particular purpose in mind, or things that I'm trying to finish. Now, currently I do have a couple of other books on my nightstand that I am reading still, namely The Great Houdini, which is a book about Houdini, obviously. And then I also have a book called Good Stuff, which is a memoir about life growing up with Cary Grant, which is by his daughter. And I also have my work lunchtime read, The Moonstone, which is an older detective mystery by Wilkie Collins. And yeah, so I'm still reading those. And then I'm also still reading Nicholas Nickleby. This is part of the buddy read with Graz over the 2KBC. We're still making our way through there. I'm a couple of chapters behind, but should hopefully be catching up this weekend. That's still in the mix. And then I also have these books here, which I am rereading with a purpose. So I have, first up, Northern Borders by Howard Frank Mosher. This is one of my favorite books of all time. As you can see, I started the annotation process and have not continued, so that is something I'm hoping to get back into. I just had to take a pause in it for a couple of months, but I think I'm getting back to a place where I can revisit this again. I know you guys have heard me talk about these books right here 5 million times, but in case you haven't, this is about a boy named Austin Kittredge, although his grandmother calls him Tut. And this is about his boyhood, basically growing up in rural Vermont in the 1950s on his grandparents' farm. And then I also plan on reading another Howard Frank Mosher, A Stranger in the Kingdom, which is not just like a coming-of-age story. It also has like kind of a mystery elements to it, a little bit of a courtroom drama. This is also set in the, I believe this is also in the 50s. And this is about 13-year-old Jim Kennison and what happens to his very rural, small Vermont town when the new pastor, who happens to be black, is accused of murdering someone. So, showing the seedy underbelly of Vermont, basically. Also, plan on doing a reread of The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, and this is following 4 daughters and their mothers. Basically, it's these 4 Chinese American women navigating the world and reflecting on their relationships with their own mothers, and then it's the stories of these mothers who have immigrated from China when they were younger, trying to relate to their daughters and also make their daughters understand like their lives and things that they've brought with them, basically, over the years. And this is all taking place after one of the women has suddenly lost her mother. And for other rereads, I also am trying to finish doing a reread and annotation, as you can see, of The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin, which is about a very kind of diverse group of people all brought together to live randomly in this apartment building, and basically what occurs after this rich old tycoon who lived in the mansion next door dies and names them all as his heirs, and they have to find out who killed him to win a massive prize. This is a childhood favorite. As you can see, yeah, I've been annotating and reading that, and then I'd also like to read, not only because it is for a reread, because these are all rereads for future videos. I'm reading and annotating them, but this book is not only for the purpose of doing that, but also because it's a very wintry book. It is Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie, and this is featuring her famed Belgian detective Hercule Poirot. And this is Hercule Poirot on a train trying to head back home to get involved in an emergency case, and what happens when the train is snowbound and a murder occurs on board. And then I also would like to finish my reread and annotation. You can see I barely got into this earlier this year. It's my reread of The Count of Monte Cristo, which I absolutely adore, which is a classic tale of revenge. So those are all with different purposes and all reads that I'm trying to reread and finish, or like in the case of Nicholas Nickleby and the other couple of books that I'm trying to get through right now, those are just me trying to finish them off. Other reads, I have this stack here, which is winter reads specifically. So I have specific December reads, so things that I would like to try to get through this upcoming month. And one of them is, of course, is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I read this every year. It is one of my favorite books. I actually usually read this twice. So I think this is the physical copy that I'm going to read this year, because one of my other physical copies is the one that I read and annotated last year. So I like to try to switch it up between them. So I will probably be reading this, and then I will be also listening to an audiobook at some point this year of it as well, while I'm working on people's presents. And if you also like the audiobook, I highly recommend the Tim Curry version because he does an excellent job. And then also probably reading directly around Christmas time, because I usually read the physical copy like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, or the day after. Also around that time, I'm gonna do a reread of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, just because. And then I have 3 Christmassy books, which is very exciting for me because I usually don't have a lot of Christmas-centered books, if they're not children's books, really. So what I have is, first of all, A Castle in the Clouds by Kirsten Gier, and this is one that I actually started last year, but never finished reading. I only got 2 chapters in. I'll just start it over because I only got 2 chapters in. And this is one that I started it in January, I think, and then quickly realized that this was more of a Christmas read, and I was not in the mood for Christmas reads in January. So this is about a girl named Sophie. She is working at this exquisite hotel in I think it's in the Swiss Alps. Doesn't say. It's a grand European hotel, and she basically, she's kind of like a child minder as part of her job, and she is having to mind an especially obnoxious child this year. But then there's also apparently a adventure that crops up, including a very attractive sudden stranger that she meets. So, hotel at Christmas time. I mean, that sounds pretty good. And then I've also got The Enchanted Sonata by Heather Dixon Walwork, and this is a Nutcracker retelling. That sounds pretty good. This is about Clara. She has her life perfectly planned out, but on Christmas Eve she receives a magical nutcracker is whisked away to his world, and she ends up having to face a magician who uses magic as spells, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at the back and it's like, that's just a really weird way of putting that. Uses magic as spells. Interesting. I don't know. Anyway, it is basically a retelling of the Nutcracker. Okay, Banks, hi! I have never seen, like, the Nutcracker ballet, but it was a story that I really liked when I was a little kid. I had like one of those audiobook things of it, and I really loved listening to that and really liked the story, and I do collect Nutcrackers, so I really like them. So I figure this would be a fun, like, fantastical book to read in December. And then we're taking a quick turn here and going to be reading Nosferatu by Joe Hill, because what spells Christmas better than being scared out of your wits? This is following Vic McQueen. She has a knack for finding things. When she rides her bicycle over a rickety covered bridge in the woods near her house, she always emerges in places that she needs to be. But there's also this man out there called Charles Talent Manx. He has a gift of his own. He likes to take children for rides in his Rolls Royce with the vanity plate Nosferatu. In the Rolls Royce, he and his innocent guests slip out of the everyday world and onto hidden roads that lead to an astonishing playground of amusements he calls Christmasland. But the journey across the highway of his twisted imagination transforms his passengers, leaving them as terrifying and unstoppable as their benefactor. Vic goes looking for trouble and finds her way to Charlie. That was a lifetime ago. She is the only kid ever to escape his evil, and she wants to forget about it. But Charlie Manx has not forgotten about the kid that got away. So she's going to have to face off against this evil guy who wants to take her to Christmasland. Sounds pretty great. I know Nosferatu is, like, obviously, you know, the vampire. I don't know if that's what he's going to be in this or not. So pretty exciting. I've wanted to read this for a long time, and I'm also really excited because I've never read a Joe Hill before. So this will be my first, and I'm hoping for good things because I've heard good things. And then we get into books straight up for the winter season. Now, these might come up in December, or they might just be for January and February. They are just winter feeling books. So one of them might seem pretty obvious. It is called Snow. Obviously winter read. It's by Orhan Pamuk, and this is about an exiled poet named Ka who returns to Turkey and travels to the city of Kars. He is supposed to be reporting on a wave of suicides among religious girls, but he's also drawn back by his memories of this woman named Ipek, who is recently divorced. So this says, it's amid blanketing snowfall and universal suspicion, Ka finds himself pursued by figures ranging from Ipek's ex-husband to a charismatic terrorist. So don't know what to expect from this, don't know how crazy it's going to be. I have never read anything by this author before, but I have heard, I think, mostly good things about this book. So excited to try something new and also winter read. Then we have, I feel like this is appropriate just because of Dickens, because Christmas Carol, and also I'm currently trying to make my way through Nicholas Nickleby. I figured good time to pick up The Mystery of Charles Dickens. This is by A. Ann Wilson, and this is about Charles Dickens' life. Famous author, obviously. So this goes into, like, his life, his imagination, and basically why he wrote what he wrote, his experiences and everything. And I think it mostly sticks with all of that. It says that this also works to reveal why his novels capture the hearts of 19th century readers and why they continue to resonate with people today. So this sounds lovely. And I would also like to pick up Where the Rivers Flow North by Howard Frank Mosher. There's not a solid reason for this, other than the cover, is a winter scene. And I figured that feels pretty much winter-like. This one contains 6 shorter stories and follows just a cast of characters in the, I think it's mostly, again, in his fictional Kingdom County, where the rest of his books take place. I believe they're all set there. These are a bunch of short stories and a novella. So I don't know if they're all going to take place over the course of winter, but I think that'll be fine anyway, because his books are just, honestly, they're great to read any time of year. Then I'd like to do a reread, I think, of The Child Finder by Renee Denfield. I know, the cover also very wintry. And from what I remember when I read this several years ago, I feel like there was a lot of winter elements to this and very snowy. This is 3 years after a little girl was, she went missing while she was out in, Skookum National Forest in Oregon. She was out with her family looking for a Christmas tree, goes missing. She was actually kidnapped. And this is about a young woman who is really good at locating missing children, and she has been hired to find this little girl, but at the same time, this journey is not only about trying to find the child, but she is also like trying to face her own past, because she once was also a missing child. So really, really good, and I'm really excited to revisit it. And then this one kind of moves us into the next phase of books here. It is The Bear and the Nightingale, and this is by Catherine Arden. This is the first book in a fantasy trilogy that is set in Russia, sometime far in the past. And this in the Russian wilderness and following Vasya. Vasya has like the gift of magic, but she has been hiding that because after her mother has died, a while later her father remarries, and the stepmother is kind of a religious zealot and doesn't believe in respecting the old ways and appeasing the spirits of the wood and everything that like traditions are done every year to, you know, keep the darkness and whatnot at bay. And Vasya grew up with all of these tales and still follows the old traditions, and now she's not allowed to do that anymore. So basically the village's defenses kind of weaken, and Vasya has to call upon the gifts she's been hiding to try to protect everyone. I have been trying to get into this book for a long time, and I just have not been able to manage it, but I'm hoping this winter is the winter. Because I'm really starting to feel about in the mood for fantasy again, and that's fairly true for winter. That is the time of year when I'm mostly wanting to read fantasy for some reason, so I'm hoping this will do it. Moving into that, I've got books here of everything that I'm currently thinking I'm gonna be in the mood for. So we have, first up, Time Cat by Lloyd Alexander. I never finished reading it, and I really need to finish reading it. It is not that long of a book. This is depressing. This is about a boy named Jason who has this cat named Gareth, and his cat can basically like travel across the world through all time and see life through different eyes. And he ends up taking Jason on this journey through time. So it's basically like going through, throughout time, and how people felt about cats and treated cats. There was a section about ancient Egypt, of course. There's also been Rome, China, Ireland, Japan. I think I'm in the Japanese section where I left off. Italy, Peru, Isle of Man, Germany, and then America, which I'm wondering what America will be like, because I'm pretty sure Gareth is a black cat, and black cats weren't doing so good for a period of time there in this country. They're still not, to be honest. Go adopt a black cat. they're not evil, they are ridiculous. Speaking of books that I really need to get back to, we have The Ever-Cruel Kingdom by Rin Chapeko. I don't want to say much about this because it is a sequel, but the first book has to do, it's The Never Tilting World. It has to do with two princesses on either side of the world, and years ago there was this cataclysmic thing that happened, and it basically caused their world to stop turning, and due to this it has fucked up the climate. Like, half of the world is just ice, frozen tundra, and the other half is a ridiculous desert. So this is about these girls traveling to the point of the cataclysm. They're trying to get back to that site with companions to figure out if there's something they can do to help save their world, because things are just increasingly getting worse. So this is the sequel to that. I only got like a couple of chapters in when I started it immediately after getting this, and never got back to it. So I'm gonna try to hop back in to this now that I'm like in the mood for fantasy again. And then, I swear to God, this is gonna be the time that I actually do this. I have been sitting on the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab for a couple of years now. Actually, more than a couple. It's probably been like 5, 6, I don't know. I have read A Darker Shade of Magic like 3 times at this point. I love this book. Every time I read this book, I love this book. It makes me so jazzed for the rest of the trilogy, and then I pick up book 2 and I just never continue past a couple of chapters. That's depressing. I think it's mostly because I am afraid. I'm afraid that something terrible will happen to these characters because I really, 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 really like them. And I'm also kind of afraid because I really love V.E. Schwab's writing, but I don't always like her conclusions. Her City of Ghosts trilogy, for example, I love that. Book 1, amazing. Book 2, fantastic. Book 3 was so good, and then she just did not stick with that landing. It was just not, in my opinion, I don't know, it was not a good climactic story. It was anticlimactic, to be honest. And the same thing happened with Gallant. Was loving it, did not stick the landing. Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I have more opinions on that one, but so I'm just a little concerned because of how much I enjoyed this book. I'm very worried that book 3 is not going to live up to it. Feeling very cynical about that, but anyway, I know this is the year I need to read it. I have held off spoilers as long as I can. I know there is like an offshoot of this that is happening that I've been trying to avoid as well because I don't want spoilers from this one. So yeah, I'm just gonna bite the bullet and do it. This is in a world where there are different Londons. There is Grey London, no magic. This is basically our London. And it has one mad king, George III. And I believe this, if I remember correctly, this is taking place near the end of George III's like life and reign. So, Mad King George. So this is the same George in Bridgerton with Queen Charlotte. And this is also the same George, coincidentally, when he was younger. You know, who the American Revolution, or you might know him better as the guy who says you'll come back in Hamilton. Same king. So basically this is taking place near the end of his reign in Grey London, but there is another London, Red London. There is magic abound, you know, and then there's also White London, which is a city that is slowly being drained of power due to a magical war. And once upon a time, there was a Black London, but nobody speaks about it. It's basically been lost. But suddenly, there is a man named Kel. He is a red traveler. He can use blood magic to travel between the Londons, basically. And he's like a ambassador, messenger, and stuff like that. And he also has a secret hobby of being a smuggler. And he comes across an artifact from Black London, which should not exist, and this changes everything. I love this book every time I read it. So my plan is to do a reread of this yet again, get me hyped, and then I'm going to get into book 2, which is A Gathering of Shadows, which I'm not going to talk about because it's a spoiler for book 1, and then the last book is A Conjuring of Light. So hoping this will be the year that I actually get to all of them. Last books here are books that I'm just overall, I'm in the mood for. I'm also in the mood for nonfiction, and there's books that I've talked about recently, things that I'm like currently reading. So like I said, the book about Houdini, the book about Cary Grant, I might be finished with them before December, because just full disclosure, I'm actually filming this like pre-Thanksgiving, so we'll see what happens in the last few days of November. But I also have these other nonfiction books that I really like to get to. So I'm currently reading Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin, which is a series of essays that he wrote about being black in the world, and growing up in like Harlem and his experiences in Harlem. But I believe a lot of this also has to do with like the difference between like being black in America and being black in like Paris, which is, and the rest of Europe, and because he lived for quite a while, I think, in Paris. So I know a lot of it is about that. I also know that he was fairly openly gay at the time, and this is like during the 50s, 60s, I believe. So I think some of it might also be about that, because I know he's referenced it in one of the essays that I've read already. I am not that far into it, but I am loving it already. It's just so good. Then I've got The Rights of Man by Thomas Paine. I've also been wanting to read this one. I really love Thomas Paine. I think he was a very interesting, cool dude from what I read about him, and I love Common Sense. I reread that like last year, maybe the year, I think it was last year. I'd read that entire thing in high school during my Revolutionary War phase where I was just obsessing over it. So I just reread that, loved getting into that again. So I have never read Rights of Man, but very interested in it, and I know that this is like something he was kind of asked about, and he presented, dedicated it to George Washington, basically. I think a lot of this has to do with like French Revolution and things, so yeah. And then I also have Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. I've been wanting to read this one for a while, and I'm figuring, fuck it, why not? I want to get to it this winter. I think I'm going to hold off on it for December, because I don't want to get myself all riled up, because I know 100% with a fact this is going to rile me up. So I'll probably save this for January. And then I've also got Audrey Hepburn, An Elegant Spirit by Sean Hepburn Farrar. And this is, her son, Sean, wrote this about her. It has really beautiful pictures in it. I was in the mood for this, like earlier this month I decided, you know what, I want to finally give this a read, because I rewatched Charade, which is one of my favorite movies, and I also rewatched like How to Steal a Million, which is another movie that I love, and I adore Audrey Hepburn. And I decided around that time, I was like, well, I want to read one of my books about Cary Grant. I was like, perfect time to also read something about Audrey Hepburn. So yeah, I don't think this will be a December. This is probably going to be like a January, February read. Also, probably around then too, is The Nutshell Studies of Unexplained Death by Corian May Botts, and this has to do with exactly that, the nutshell studies, which are miniature crime scenes that were made by Frances Glessner Lee, who's this total, like, really cool lady who made these crime scenes, mini crime scenes, to help train law enforcement how to properly investigate crime scenes and not, like, totally fuck things up. And they are on display at a university, and the solutions to the mysteries are still kept secret because they are still being used to help train investigators, which is awesome. So this has full color photographs. My husband just got me this for my birthday because I've been really wanting it for a long time. So I also, yeah, really want to read this in January and February because, first of all, awesome, and I want to learn a little more about Frances Glessner Lee because she sounds super cool. But then I figure this is awesome to look at anyway because hopefully that will, like, kickstart me on getting back into working on my mystery novel. And then these couple of books I recently got them, like, what, August, September, something like that, and I was like, these are gonna be put off for a while, but I've been just kind of staring at them and feeling like, you know what, I really want to read these sooner rather than later. So I have, first of all, we need to talk about Kevin by Lionel Shriver, which is about Eva and her writing a series of letters, and I think they are to her husband, mostly, her estranged husband, and this is her trying to cope with the terrible tragedy that was their son shooting up his high school and the aftermath of all of that. So this is going to be, like, wicked tough, but I don't know, my brain is like, no, you want to read this. So yeah, probably gonna pick that up. And then finishing this off, it's more spooky than anything, so maybe it's weird to want to read this now, but it's How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, which is about a brother and sister. Their parents have died, and they have come back home after avoiding it for so long to their parents' creepy house, which is full of their collections, one of which was a bunch of puppets, I guess. And this is them coming back to the house and trying to, like, go through everything and deal with it to get it ready to put on the market, but also kind of deal with stuff from childhood, and also trying to figure out, you know, why did their parents cover the windows with newspaper, and why are things so eerie here right now. I don't know how this will be because I've never read a Grady Hendrix. I have heard mixed things about Grady Hendrix's work, but the premise of this sounds really cool. My one concern is getting a fear of puppets, because I actually really love puppets. I think they're fucking awesome. And I've always wanted to, like, I kind of made one with some help in high school. I'd really like to make my own again. And I think puppets are awesome. So I'm slightly concerned that I will gain a fear of puppets. But I mean, I read Night of the Living Dummy as a kid, and I am mostly okay around ventriloquist dummies, so I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, guys, that is everything, basically, that I want to read over the course of the next couple of months. I think this is a lot of stuff. Maybe, honestly, an insane amount of things to really want to read around this time of year. I don't know how December will be, because December gets exceptionally, like, crazy with me, because of just trying to get things done. But yeah, I think this will be really good. I'm hoping to actually get to most of these for once. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if if any of these are also on your TBR for the winter, or if there's anything that you're excited you're going to be reading in the next couple of months. Thank you for watching. Thank you for always watching. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, please do so, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.